Why does LCARA have 2 planned workdays where we go to our repeater sites each month? Well, that's what's coming up next on LCARA Ham Radio. All right, folks, this is Chris, KY4CKP for Lake Cumberland Amateur Radio Association. Well, it was that time, and as we'll hear later in this video, it was really past that time. We needed to paint one of our towers, and in fact, we need to paint the other one as well. So we'll be having to get on that as soon as time and weather can permit. But we've talked as a club about work days and performing maintenance on your repeater sites, and especially when they're exposed to the element like ours are. You need to get out there and visually inspect things. So even on times where we really don't have anything specific on the agenda as far as repairs or adding equipment or just anything, we still go out and visually inspect our locations just to make sure nothing bad has happened. And usually nothing bad has happened. But, storms go through, and you just want to double check on everything. As long as the repeater functions, things are probably not too bad, but it's good to go and take a look. And so we had our recent repeater work day at our secondary site here, and it was a good day to get somebody up on the tower and paint the tower all the way from the top to the bottom. As Ken will mention later, this tower may not have ever been painted because once the commercial entity had given it up to HAMRadio, it just probably never got painted. So it was still in pretty good shape, which was the good news. But it's good to just maintain your equipment, and especially that stuff exposed to the elements. But also, as you saw in the opening little video there, and as we'll see a little bit later, we knew we'd had some severe windstorms come through. We knew we'd shown you before about some trees that had leaned over and some things. We cleared some of that stuff out. But once the company came and cleared out that big tower that's next to us, a big tree leaned on over all the way to the ground, and the root ball opened up a big hole. And it's right next to one of our guy points. So we're going to have to clear that big stump and kind of repair that hole that's in the ground. It looks like our guy point is still okay. It looks like it's still functioning fine, but it's just one of those things that's kind of unexpected, above and beyond what we had originally kind of seen from that particular windstorm. But this day was also largely about, again, getting Ken up on the tower, and it takes a while. Again, with all the stuff we had on there, everything he had to work around, Ken was up on our tower. It was about 5.5 hours, and we greatly appreciate his doing that, because once you get up there, you pretty much just have to stay up there and finish the job. He's got a great harness, and he does this for a living, so he's he kind of knows the techniques on how to rest his legs and all that stuff. But it just has to get done, every so often, and we need to do our second tower at our main site, so we'll be planning for that again, hopefully this year, as time and weather come together and allow for that. So again, you just want to make sure your guy lines are good, your guy points are good, and that your tower's in good shape. We've probably got some antennas to replace. We've probably got some cabling to replace, either because it's been up there for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, or we may be having a little bit of performance issues out of it. And this is part of the reason that, a club hopefully can maintain a little bit of a budget through dues and donations and just whatever else they can come up with, because there's just maintenance on things, and it's not always super expensive, but it just has to happen. So we got some footage of Ken on the tower, and it just took time, the technique that they use. So the paint doesn't go everywhere, because we're up on a pretty good knob, and he's up 140 feet on this tower, and we don't want paint literally going all over the place.
Alrighty, we're here with KI4RWO, Ken, and you guys have seen Ken erecting towers and putting antennas on towers. Ken, what are we doing today?
We're shaking hands with everybody.
Are we shaking hands with that aluminum glove?
Well, maybe if there's any left by the time I get off this tower, it's wearing out.
Wearing out.
So, no, this is how you paint these towers without getting paint all over the county, because you can't spray them.
And that's an EPA thing, right? You can't spray them, or it just wouldn't be. It wouldn't be. It'd be too hard.
Unless you want to waste a lot of paint.
Right.
To do it. And paint every car in Monticello. Now, who's that calling?
That was McKenna. So spray painting one of these would just be a lot of waste. So you've got a glove on. Well, actually, you've got several gloves on. You've got layers.
Yeah, I start out with a cloth glove, but you can't see it.
Right, but it's on the inside from the sweat perspective.
Yeah, to catch the sweat and everything. And then put on one of these rubber gloves just to keep the, some of the paint off my hands and everything.
Right.
And then you put jersey gloves on top of that. And then you start at the top, and then you just rub your way down.
Rub your way down.
Literally.
And literally, you're getting not only the vertical support poles, but you're getting all of the ladder work going down the
You get
smaller.
the braces, the steps, everything.
Everything. That means you've got to touch all of it.
When you're done, you have literally rubbed every inch of this tower.
That's amazing. And that's how you paint a tower.
That's how you paint them.
At least like this kind.
And they make a mitt, they call it tower mitt, and it looks like a mitt that you wash your car with.
Right.
But it don't have the fingers in it.
So there's no dexterity or...
So you can't, take your pinky and get down into that crack right there.
Right.
And rub paint in it.
How often, first question I guess is how long does paint like this last? This is Rust-Oleum something aluminum paint?
This is just straight aluminum paint. And it should last 10 years before it's not noticeable no more.
Right.
So, and it just depends on how well the tower holds up in the weather.
Right.
And everything.
And you brought a gallon. How much do you think? And you poured some of it out of the bucket so it wouldn't spill when you're up on the tower.
Yeah, you see how much I got left.
And you've still got about a third of a bucket or a quarter of a bucket left, don't you?
Yeah.
So it's a thin coat that you're putting on there ultimately.
It's a very thin coat. It's almost like water.
Right.
You see it running down there. But what that does, that will soak in to anything that's got like surface rust, anything. It'll get into the bolts. It'll penetrate.
Nice.
Down in it and everything, and it just stops water. That's all you're wanting.
Is this the same paint you would put on the guy lines as well?
You don't paint those.
You don't paint those. You have to replace those.
Yeah. Because if you're going to take them down to paint them, you might as well put new ones back up.
Yeah, that would be an easier chore or job instead of putting up a whole new tower.
Yeah.
And of course, you've got cables all over this tower, and you've had to go around, antenna mounts, and we've got a dish up there. You just do the best you can around some of that, don't you?
Yeah, you just get what you can get back into.
Right.
And the rest is of course, this tower, I'd say it's never been painted since it's been put up, and it's been put up quite a while, so it would last. It'll last a long time without it, starting to rust.
Right.
But the quicker you get paint on something and keep it painted to keep that water off of it, the longer it's going to last.
Right. And then we've got to do this to the other repeater site, don't we?
Yep. Tried to paint these last year, and the weather just didn't cooperate. You got to have a nice sunny day, because you don't want that paint sitting up there for 2 or 3 days and not curing to the tower, because then when it rains, it could wash it off.
Right.
So today is perfect, because in about 15 minutes this will probably be dry enough to touch.
And again, it's a really thin coat, isn't it? It's amazing.
And then you're rubbing it in too
to get it into the pores.
Yeah, to penetrate it down in some of those spots. Because if you get it too thick and then you go back to climate, this paint never really dries. That's why you put it on thin.
Okay.
Because if you left a big gob of it there, it'll dry on the outside, and then when you put your hand on it, it's still going to be wet on the inside, and then then your hand's going to look like that.
I didn't know that. So it really doesn't flake off or anything. It would just not really harden.
Yeah, and it's made to the water and everything to keep washing it off a little bit. That's why it stays so shiny for a long time. It's like self-cleaning.
And it's aluminum paint, so you don't have to worry about, moss or algae or anything like that growing on it. And this is what it looks like, guys. This is an untreated horizontal piece here, and then Ken's working on the one above it, and you can see how it turns silver.
And if you get really good, you can average about a foot a minute.
About a foot a minute, and this one was 130 feet, so we're looking at 2 hours plus.
Yeah, and then that's not counting going around all your brackets and
that's right,
standoffs.
So you're looking at 2.5, 3 hours really. But about a foot a minute if we were just looking at it from a.
Yeah, if this was just a straight tower.
Right.
With just the guy wires on it, you can do about a foot a minute.
Well, Ken, again, we really appreciate you providing this kind of a service to the club. I know there's a lot of clubs out there that would love to have somebody like you.
Yeah, because most of them have to hire it out, and that's why they don't do too much maintenance on nothing.
Right. Like if you were hired out to do this, what is it? 200 an hour or?
You go by the foot.
The foot
on it. So since paint's gone up quite high in the last 2 years, if I wasn't affiliated with you all and you'd call me and said, "Hey, come down here and paint the tower," you're looking at about $350.
Okay. Well, and there's clubs out there that can afford that, but then there's some of these smaller clubs that would be a dent, so, in their finances. But this really needs to be done like every 10 or 15 years.
That's still cheap price to pay.
Exactly.
For
having
keeping your tower.
Having it to go totally in disrepair and then having to replace it. Much more expensive.
All right, and so while we had quite a bit of time this day on this work day, we were doing a few different things. We were taking advantage of being out. It was a beautiful day, which was a good day to paint the tower. And so here we've got Mike and Fred. They're hooking up to the repeater and making a backup of the current repeater settings and stuff like that, so that we have everything kind of documented and we can work on things. And this particular repeater, we may end up needing to do some work with it, maybe adjust some settings or something. But we just need to keep everything backed up. Several of us in the club are IT folks and are pretty comfortable with computers and that kind of stuff. So not too big a deal. We just use the programming software, and we can save out the current settings. And if we do make any adjustments, then it's not too hard to upload the new settings. And again, a lot of it's visual inspection. We go there. Of course, we have times where we mow the grass and spray weed killer. I tell you what, folks, the ticks have already been out in force here in Central Kentucky, South Central Kentucky, this year. They're just really out there. So monitor the grounds, monitor the tower, our buildings, and so in this building, on a previous trip, we noticed we had a very small leak at one of the seams in the roof, which is kind of unusual. The way these buildings are built, they typically do really well as far as weather, kind of being weatherproof and everything. But we noticed a very slight leak, and it wasn't a problem yet. But of course, we don't want it to become a problem either. So again, we're backing up the configuration of equipment and testing some things. But also, as you'll see, we had another member with some rubberized paint, and he was going over a number of seams and stuff in what we feel like was the trouble area on the outside of this building, because this particular building is not that new. If you've seen the abandoned repeater site series of videos, we bought this building brand new not too long ago. but again, there's been lots of storms and wind and stuff up here, so you just have to do what you have to do, repair whatever needs some work. So again, trying to work on the seams. Ben was up there and went over again a bunch of different seams and things, try to make sure we could stop that minor leak. It wasn't bad, and of course we don't want it to get bad and actually drip on equipment and damage any equipment. So it's just again some of the stuff you have to do. So he just had a bucket of rubberized paint that you can use for like RV roofs and things like that, and again was just out there hitting some of those seams and stuff. And we'll keep an eye on it, and if we have to, we'll do some more work. But it's just part of what what we need to do as far as maintaining this equipment so that we can use it, enjoy it, and it'll be there for us if we need it during any emergency situations, because that's a big part of what HAMRadio helps provide in the community. So yeah, it was very, very nice for Ben to spend some time doing that while Ken was on the tower. I didn't think to ask Ben whether or not he had any silver, whether or not he had any of that aluminum paint. Ken, the way Ken applies that paint, it's pretty good, but there's a little bit of wind. Now this is some of our guide points. These are the new ones that we put in, and we did videos on that. And this is that one where that tree fell over, and it was a good sized tree. Well, while the tree was there, everything was fine, but it fell over, and when it fell all the way to the ground, once they had cut it down, because this was leaning over on the property next to us on a commercial tower, it just opened up a big hole. I don't know if we get a good shot of the sort of the hole where that root ball, but if you see that root ball, right, that was all on the ground. So we're just going to have to clean this up. We're just going to have to get that stump out of there and, and kind of backfill in some stuff. It looks like our guy point is still in good shape, but, just we'll keep an eye on that and we'll fix that. So here we are. The tower's all done. It was nice and bright silver again. Again, it was actually in pretty good shape, so we were lucky with that, even though it hadn't maybe ever been painted, as Ken said. And now it should be pretty good to go for, maybe a good 10 years or so. And we'll get the other site painted and probably take you folks along for that maintenance as well. So, again, you just need to get out there and maintain your equipment, and then we get to enjoy it the whole rest of the time. So that pretty much wraps up this workday. This is Chris, KY4CKP, for Lake Cumberland Amateur Radio Association. We will see you folks in the next video. Don't forget our vintage videos on Tuesdays. And that'll wrap it up. 73.